Thank you very much, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. It's a great pleasure to be here at the Holberg debate. And speaking as a former mayor of London, can I just take this opportunity to say thank you, Norway, for all the Christmas trees over many years. And thank you for inviting me to this beautiful city. Stephen's completely right. Living proof of what I used to tell the tourists in London. It is not raining more than 90% of the time. And Bergen has clearly a location that makes it the quintessential Atlantic city, because it was from the West Norwegian coast that those hardy adventurers set out on the whale road, the seal bath, the field of ships, the ale of waves, other beautiful old Norse words for the sea that penetrated early English poetry, and such was their energy that they came to Britain, where he ruled us for a while, and Ireland, Iceland, Greenland, Normandy, Sicily, across the Mediterranean, right the way to Ukraine. In 1000 AD, the Vikings actually became the first Europeans to get to North America and to create the first beginnings of the linguistic, cultural, political bond between Europe and America that has been the greatest and most decisive geopolitical fact of the last 150 years, helped deliver humanity from tyranny, First World War, Second World War, Cold War, because the transatlantic alliance was collectively willing to pay the price for freedom and to stand up to aggression. And that is what we in Britain and Norway are called upon to do again today. We have come to the first great turning point of the 21st century. Our generation, everybody in this room, everybody on our continent is going to be judged by this moment. The answer to all the debates, I think the title of this debate is about collective security, all the debates about the future of our collective security can be found in the way we respond to this immediate question, which is, do we have the courage to ensure the survival of Ukraine as a free, sovereign and independent country? As we meet tonight, the Ukrainians are continuing to fight and die in the name, as we constantly tell them, of our freedom, but without a single Western soldier committed to join them in the battle. This is a country whose borders we all recognize, and Russia recognized in 1991, whose security was nominally guaranteed in 1994, and which has been at no stage a threat to the Russia of Vladimir Putin. I was sitting in virtually every significant NATO meeting from 2016 to 2022, and there was never a snowball's chance in Hades of Ukraine joining NATO, because any such suggestion would have attracted the immediate veto of France, Germany, the USA, and many other states. There would have been a caviar bowl of blackballs. And it is a damnable lie for Putin now to claim that he was driven to invade by NATO expansionism, when he is the expansionist, he is the revanchist and neo-imperialist who set out to conquer Ukraine, because he is terrified of the implications for him, for Putin, for the Kremlin, of the Ukrainian choice to set out down the path away from Moscow towards a free, pluralist, democratic, Western European identity. And that's what he hates. That's what he fears. And that's why he invaded. And he did it not because Ukraine was protected by NATO, or because Ukraine was going to join NATO, but precisely because it wasn't protected by NATO. And even so, it turned out that he made a disastrous mistake, which has cost him 1.1 million killed or wounded, for less than 20% of the country, in a war where, unless we are weak, he has no serious chance of winning. A snail would get to the Polish border faster at this rate than Putin's troops. And of course, in the face of the continuing misery, the untold suffering of the Ukrainians, it is right to make peace. Everybody in this room wants peace. Europeans want peace. President Trump wants peace. The world wants peace. And the Ukrainians want peace. The question is how we can get Putin to make peace and preserve Ukraine as a free, sovereign and independent country. And right now the Ukrainians are being told by some US negotiators that they will have to accept the loss of the whole of the Donbass including Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, about 5,000 square kilometers of territory that Putin does not even occupy. Think what that concession means for soldiers who've been fighting since 2014. And remember what happens to territory that's taken by Putin, right? The wholesale kidnap of children, the torture and mutilation of those who resist, a program of violent Russification, including the murder of about 80 Orthodox non-Russian priests so far. This prospect, surrendering their land, is a nightmare for Ukraine. A nightmare made worse by the almost unbelievable suggestion that the United States would formally recognize land that Russia has stolen as Russian, which would be the first time that Washington has done any such thing since the Second World War. But you know, appalling though this prospect is, I think the Ukrainians might. Such is their desire for peace. They might accept some compromise on Donbass. And they might accept the capping of their armed forces, if and only if they seriously believe that they have a future as an independent country, and if they believe that we in the West would guarantee their security. The Ukrainians would do a peace deal if they possibly could, but the Ukrainians are not the problem. Where is the evidence that Putin wants peace? Why should he not just pocket these appalling concessions, gloating at the moral humiliation of the West, and continue his campaign of bombing and killing? But what kind of pressure are we really putting on Vladimir Putin right now? What's the message he's getting from these negotiators? Ceasefire, Putin, ceasefire, or else we walk away. Ceasefire, or else we abandon the Ukrainians. The only chance of ending this war is for all of us to turn up the heat on Putin. And it is my central message, it's no use for us Europeans just to blame the Americans. When Europe is still buying Russian gas and paying about $1 billion a month straight into Putin's war machine, and it's no use us sitting here in beautiful Bergen and whimpering about the document that came out on Friday, the strategy document to which Stephen referred, when the average American citizen is paying $3,000 a year in tax on defense, and the average European citizen is paying what? 900. 3,000 against 900, when we in Europe have a vast panoply of expensive social protections, maternity leave, paternity leave, heaven knows what. How many weeks holiday do you have in Norway per year? 5. How many do they have in America? Have you been to America? Have you seen how hard they work? 2 weeks holiday a year. Well, the Americans have noticed this difference. And until very recently, the American taxpayer was actually paying more for the defense of Ukraine than the average European taxpayer. And I have to tell you that Donald Trump is not alone in thinking that the Europeans have been free riding for too long. And so if we want to take our collective security seriously, if we want the Americans to take it seriously, we have to show them that we take it seriously ourselves. Ask any Ukrainian general how much they depend on the US for support in fighting this war, and they will tell you that the Americans have been indispensable. And as President Trump has mentioned in the past, I think it would be a good thing now if the US were to give the Tomahawk cruise missiles as well, with their ability to strike deep at Russian military targets. But it would help if the Europeans now led the way. Britain and France have sent Storm Shadow and Scalp EEG. Why can't the Germans send their Taurus missiles? After almost 4 years of talking about it, why can't we liberate Putin's funds that are frozen in European bank accounts and use them as reparations loan to Ukraine? There's $140 billion at least in Belgium, 20 billion in London, about 18 billion in Paris. That money could be lent to the Ukrainians as a down payment on the reparations that Russia should legally and morally render for the damage estimated at well over 600 billion that they have done in Ukraine. And of course, if Russia does pay those reparations, then Ukraine repays the loan. But in the meantime, that money would keep the Ukrainians going and pay their troops for years. Why haven't we done it? Because we're nervous about some future Russian legal action? It is absolutely absurd. The European Council meets on December the 18th. They should green-light this. But in the meantime, the UK government, which, as Stephen reminds you, I used to lead, should get going and do it ourselves with the 20 billion that we have in London. Because it would not only be a massive boost to the Ukrainians, but it would persuade Putin that we are serious about ending this war and that we will ratchet up the price that he has to pay. And for the same reason, we should follow the Trump administration in discriminating against all countries that continue to buy Putin's hydrocarbons and to fund his war machine. We should crack down on his shadow fleet that helps him to avoid sanctions, and if one of them should find its way to the bottom of the whale road, then so much the better. And as for the coalition of the willing, the plan to put European boots on the ground, which I know Norway supports, and my question is, why are we waiting? There are plenty of parts of Ukraine that are frankly as safe as Bergen, and Bergen seems very safe indeed. We could send those troops now, not in a war-fighting role, but to give training and logistical support, if only to make this crucial point that it is up to the Ukrainians to decide which foreign troops to invite onto their soil and not up to Vladimir Putin. The Ukrainians want peace. They are desperate to settle, but they cannot and will not settle without proper security guarantees. And we can't just return to the status quo antebellum with Ukraine in a security limbo, with now a big chunk of their country in Russian hands. They will need new and convincing guarantees that they will be protected in the future. European boots on the ground, US air cover, intelligence, and all the rest of it. And you say, Putin will never accept such terms. I would answer, we haven't even tried. We're offering all the carrot to Putin and all the stick to Ukraine when it should be the other way around. If we are strong now, we can end the war with Ukraine, remaining a free, independent country. But if we're weak, then Ukraine becomes a tragic, brutalized satellite of Moscow, culture and language systematically oppressed. And we give the green light to gangsterism and aggression around the world, from the Baltic states to Taiwan. It will be if that is the result, it will be the worst defeat for the United States since Vietnam, never mind Afghanistan. It will be the worst defeat for the Atlantic Alliance and our values since Britain and Norway became founding members of that alliance 76 years ago. And we, the UK and Norway, have much to be proud of. Strategic partnership that's gone from strength to strength, including, as my friend Jens Stoltenberg reminded me yesterday, a programme now to build 5 frigates together. But we must remember the reason we founded that NATO alliance, and it was because the catastrophe of the 1940s had followed the moral failure of the 1930s, when we tried to appease a revanchist aggressor by allowing him to gobble up his neighbours. And we deluded ourselves into thinking we could do a deal with him and that there was a limit to his territorial demands. We cannot make that mistake again. I think Putin has badly miscalculated, and that the Ukrainian desire for freedom and independence is now irreversible. But we can avert so much suffering and save so many lives if we bring peace now. And the only way to do that is to turn things round, for the West to unite, and to put the pressure now, not on the victim, but on the man who started the war, on Putin. And the only way for us now to unite in the West is for Europeans to take steps now, this month, to convince the Americans that we are serious about our own security. Thank you all very much.